Today we have Jeff Coyle from MarketMuse to talk to us about how product-led growth relies on meaningful content auditing and strategy. Jeff is like super popular and I've worked with him before and he's terrific. So Jeff, I'll let you take it away from here.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for setting everything up. And sorry, I had a little bit of a technical challenge as well as we were coming on. And I'm a little bit late. And no, thank you for joining me. We're going to really wanted to talk about how content strategy, content auditing, and kind of putting a why behind everything that we recommend internally for content is so meaningful. And that's where, when Pierce and I were catching up and talking about this topic, that was something that, and I see there's still people filing in. So while we do that, while people are filing in, I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. So I'm Jeff Coyle. I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer for MarketMuse. But as you probably know, if you work with a startup, I've played most roles on the team. But my background's in product management as well as computer science. But I've been in the search engine space, both making search engines, making ad servers, building products, as well as practicing, in a content marketing and search engine marketing capacity and managing those teams, both as an in-house as well as a consultant. So as I see people filing in it, so I'm looking at the full grid of people's names. I'm not just looking at you, Pierce, like I normally would. So the topics that I really wanted to touch on today relate to getting a great understanding of who you are, so that you can assess the quality and what is needed and making decisions about what's needed for your team, decisions on what's needed from an auditing perspective, across all the different types of things that you probably talk about from a product management perspective, as well as a marketing perspective. And then depending on the type of business that you have, if you have a product-led business or if you have a hybrid, all of the different topics that may come up regarding your business and regarding the types of things that you will want to focus on to make the cases internally for what content is needed, and then how you can assess what you need to focus on. So Pierce, did you have any, prior to us getting started, did you have any questions additionally?
I didn't actually have that many questions. I don't actually have any questions. It's more of I'm eager to learn from a master. So I'm not sure how to approach this. And so I'm approaching it with an empty mind, an empty cup, if you may.
Cool. Well, I've got a great outline that I will walk through for sure today. And the basics are going to be, I want to talk through what will make a content strategy transition from being, task-based to really focused on long-term growth for your organization. That's one. The other one is going to get into how to properly conduct a content audit, a meaningful content audit. And then how you can inspire, if you're in a product management capacity, if you're focused on things like product-led onboarding, on sales enablement internally, how you can be a part of an all boats rise strategy at your organization. I was just waiting for that feedback to go away. I wasn't doing this 4 times. And then also just want to get into the types of solutions that may or may not be available to you. If we do get time on the tail end of this, depending on how things go, I'd really love to touch on competitive analysis and how important that might be for you, depending on the size of your organization. I never know exactly who's on the discussion. So depending on, and I'll try to walk through how at each stage of your company, you may want to think about competitive analysis differently. And then the last piece would be how to think about what I reference, and you might have heard this tritely stated as blue ocean content. But basically, Pierce, you're going to laugh at me for this one. I say this a lot. But basically, what's the stuff that your company, and this is something to start thinking about, what's the content that your company can create that no one else can, and why, right? Is it because you have the expert on your team that just knows everything? Is it because you have data that no one else has? Is it because your product does something and you have information that you can craft into and weave it into your thought leadership strategy? So that's going to be the tail end of what we catch up on. Pierce, validating, does that sound pretty good?
Yep, that does. And would it be all right? Should anybody have questions, just throw them in the chat. Also, if you would like to turn your camera on and say hi, please do so. All right, Jeff, you can take it away.
All right, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right, cool. So I'm gonna start this discussion, if I can grab the screen share, to just highlight some of the places where we typically spend our time. And by the way, this is all about product management. This is about content strategy, product-led growth. Some of these things reference MarketMuse, but by no means is MarketMuse something that you have to do. Hi, Amit, how are you? I love when people are waving to me. What we are a content intelligence platform that focuses on content quality. But part of that is also defining why we're going to create things. And so part of a content audit and a content strategy is to say, who are we today? So I always like to imagine our content inventory and who we are today. It's the collective of all the pages that we have in the universe on our sites and our partners. And what does that tell the world? What does it tell them that we are experts in? Where do we cover that buyer journey or that learning journey really well? So that early stage awareness, whether you do awareness, consideration, purchase, if you think about how to content map, you may also not be thinking about content that's post-purchase. If you're on the products team, I hope you are. You're thinking of your support content. You're thinking of your post-purchase troubleshooting. You're also potentially thinking about your customer activation, customer success, or your customer champion development content. So after they've become customers of yours, what content do you use to ramp up their Z coefficient, if you want to go to totally nerdy product management comments, but to get them to become champions of yours, to get them to become, part of your virality calculation? What is the content that they're using to make that happen? What interactions are they going through in your product that's making them want to become part of your customer acquisition journey because they're so successful with your content, right? So now when you think about a topic for your business, you're starting probably to think about it differently already, just hearing me say that. But I do want to branch out and think about, now we talked about the buyer journey, right? But now we want to start thinking about this from a standpoint of how one would exhibit expertise on this topic. So that's when what you're looking at on the screen, this topic clusters and content clusters, really needs to become part of your research approach. So I need to have content at all stages of the buyer journey: awareness, consideration, purchase, post-purchase troubleshooting, champion development. We already talked about that, right? I also need to make sure that when I'm covering this topic, I'm not just doing it kind of to check a box, right? I want the best possible, I want to put my company's best foot forward for this particular topic, right? Every time I put pen to page, every time I get something published, right? So if I'm publishing something on a particular topic, it's not a one page for one word type of equation. So if you've heard a search engine optimization professional getting up on a stage saying, make one page for this word and that's it, because if you do any more, you're going to cannibalize things and it's going to cause problems. By the way, fundamentally wrong, especially fundamentally wrong when you're thinking about things from a product analysis perspective, from a product-led growth perspective. Because when you're in this scenario, when you're creating content for your website that's going to weave into the customer's product experience and their product-led onboarding experience, you're coaching them forward. You're wayfinding them into maturity with however it is your product manifests. So they may come to you not knowing they have major problems, and they're researching and they're coming to somebody who they hope will become a trusted authority. They're a trusted expert on a concept. That concept is typically going to associate with the problems that your business solves or the things that you represent. In my case, right, we build content briefs at scale for teams. Content briefs are a single source of truth for your writers and the people recommending and proposing content to get on the same page. So the writer can go, they see an outline recommendation, they see recommendations for concepts to include, questions to answer, intents to target, and they can go write and be creative and focus on writing a narrative, focus on writing because that's what they're good at, focus on exhibiting expertise, right? So if I'm me, I'm MarketMuse, I want to write content that tells the story that I know everything there is to know about content briefs. I know everything about why somebody would build one. I know all the different types of briefs. I know the problems that having briefs solves. What does it solve? It solves problems with writers not trusting the people sending proposals in. It makes it writer attrition, not liking edits, getting developmental edits, getting copy edits, right? So obviously I need content on my site that exhibits that I know everything there is to know about content briefs. I know this is a little bit meta because I'm talking about content strategy about content strategy concepts, but you may be a medical billing software company, right? You got to document every possible problem, every possible business issue, all the topics that you want to exhibit to the world that you are an expert in. And now get into the storytelling part of it. Where does our site already tell the story that we're experts? Where do we already have authority? And I'm going to get into in a few minutes the check boxes that you want to create that are going to tell the story of your content audit and your content inventory. But basically what you want to get into the situation is to say, okay, well, if I'm going to get into this topic and I'm going to cover it really well, and it's an early stage awareness topic. This is a thing I know people who are just learning about the business issue that we solve against. They really want to know about this. I need to get in and I need to define everything that anyone would want to know. I need to answer all their questions. Then I need to answer the next 5 questions, the next 10 questions elegantly within the narrative of my content that's going to get them to the next stage of the funnel. So I may have early stage awareness content. What is multi-factor authentication, right? That's my most basic. I don't even know what it is, right? Or gosh, I've got, people abusing my software. I've got all this early stage awareness, problem identification. But now what's the next 5 things? What's the next 10 things somebody might want to know about? Do I have those things covered, or are they going to have to go back to a search engine, or are they going to go find it on another resource, right? I want to be the one exhibiting the expertise. I want to be the one escorting them throughout that journey, no matter where they enter or no matter where they start, because you don't deserve to be there at the bottom of the funnel unless you're there at the top of the funnel. You can write that one down, right? Because you're not going to just close them, right? Unless they already trust you. You're going to have to build that trust somewhere, right? And it's across that buyer journey. What it also does, if you sell to teams, so depending on your product-led growth strategy, or if you're in a hybrid, right, you may sell to end users, but maybe your upsell or maybe your premium product is to teams. What having content that exhibits expertise for the entire team you're selling against can activate is situations where maybe you sell to in my case, the writer. The writer wants this writer tool, right? But the CMO is the one that cuts the really big check for the entire team, right? So what are the materials on my site that are exhibiting that I understand the pain points of the CMO, as well as the content marketer, as well as the writer? So as you dive in here, that's what you want to start to think about. So this is the learning experience that we want, right? And so what now you're taking a step back and it's saying, okay, so I've got these topics that I want to own. I'm doing the research that tells the story about what it would mean to be an expert on this concept. Then I'm looking at my existing content and understanding, where do I have strengths and weaknesses? Where do I have gaps? What are the metrics that I want to be looking at? And I'm going to pause there because that's when it gets into analyzing a content item and it may surface your blind spots, it may surface your gaps. And this is the hard part of doing this really kindly internally, right? I'm speaking about it from experience, right? You don't want to go in and say, oh God, we're terrible. We just have 5 product pages and we have a blog, and the blog doesn't talk to the product page. And, the blog's writing about this crazy stuff we don't even care about. And the product, you don't really want to go in there. You want to think about the goals, the why for your content. And I'm going to pause right there to make sure. Pierce, are there any other questions that have come in so far?
I haven't listed any questions. Feel free to add your questions in the chat,
Okay,
or
awesome.
you could just unmute if you have any questions. We'll wait for a few seconds.
Thanks, y'all. So get those in. But
Yeah,
so now,
I'll accept that.
sure. Hey, Doug.
Hey, no, just had a question there. So as I look at our content strategy, my gap is that I don't have any content yet. So we're just starting out. So
Love
where
it.
would you recommend that folks first start that process? My vision is that I see the graphic where you have the related topics is trying to create different white papers, case studies for each of those topics. And then off of those, probably have different other related content that actually point people at that resource. So I can actually circulate or rotate what I'm actually showing on LinkedIn or other social media or on ads or a website, but driving them to a limited number of case studies or white papers to begin with.
Doug,
So a lot of words there.
No,
So
no, no.
It says, where would you recommend folks start and really try to break that down
Perfect.
into actionable next steps?
Completely actionable. And Doug, I love the question. Pierce knows I love hot questions coming in. That was good. And I like your avatar. I am only imagining what you look like because of that avatar. So I'm going to go to the end. I'm going to rush to the end of a few things. Because I think
the points of light are the glare off of my forehead. So
yeah. Gosh, sweet. I thought it was just the sun. So here you have so many great questions. So a little bit more about me and my background also. In 1999 to 2007, I was an early employee at a company called Knowledge Storm. Knowledge Storm was the first company who was getting people to build. We were trying to convince B2B technology companies to have white papers and to syndicate them and to generate leads and to have content on their websites. Like that, and then I worked with TechTarget. TechTarget is a major B2B technology publisher. So I can answer specifically from not just experience, but then also having worked with, I have over 2,000 clients in all kinds of industries at MarketMuse. I'm going to start at the end of something that I mentioned a little bit before. When you don't have any content, where can you possibly be inspired, right? And this is an important thing if you're just starting out in any sort of dynamic. You've rushed to content types. So I'm going to track you back one step. And it's how you're inspired. If you don't have any content, first of all, be real. Do you have none or do you have some? It's just not like the stuff you think you need. Okay. First of all, know that. You want to know if you have any pent up power or authority on concepts. So be thinking about what is your homepage if you truly don't have any content. What is your homepage or what are your product pages? What do they perform well for in organic search, for example? Do you get any traffic? For what? Branded only? Do you get some non-branded traffic? Right? That's going to give you some coaching. A lot of times, smaller or earlier stage product-led growth or SaaS companies, their homepage gets a lot of traffic for stuff they're kind of about. They got some press coverage here and there. So you want to get a handle for all the things that you are about today, all the pages you have, even if it's only a few, plus all the ways that people currently have found you for one reason or another. That's going to be part one of this three-headed beast, right? That's who are you today? That's what you want. That's the first one. Your second one, I love it. I've got a Batman Band-Aid. I cut myself this morning. It was the only Band-Aid that I have. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I'm making a 1 with a Batman Band-Aid. Okay, so number 2 is your desires. So might be the desire of your team, maybe the desire of your CEO, or just the stuff that you want to be about. All right, so that's your other part 2. Part 3 is going to be your competitive cohort analysis, right? So that's where you've got to look and see not just the person you sell against, right? But who's competing with you and has a content inventory that you find inspiring for one reason or another. So we can spend an entire, 30 hours doing great competitive analysis processes. And I'll point Pierce to some of those recordings and such. But really quickly, what you want to do is, first of all, be kind to yourself here. Try to find some folks that are similar stage as you, maybe one level further along, or maybe one level further back, depending on where you are. And we want to understand what they're publishing, where they are providing differentiated value, and what success they've had. Where do they have early stage awareness content on this topic? Where do they have really great content, stuff that I love, right? I think it's wonderful at all stages and all coverage levels, right? Now, why is that important? It's not because we're going to copy them. It's because we want to understand and set expectations internally for our business. So we want to know that, I was just talking to somebody who has a mom blog, and I know y'all don't have mom blogs, but I'm just going to use a mom blog example, right? So we know that this mom blog has 172 posts that were published over a 2-year period on these topics. 30% of them are really good. The rest of them are kind of fluffy and not all that great. We've assessed them. We've built some topic models. We know that based on that level of efficiency, she is currently yielding this much traffic per month into these zones. It's not to say that if we go we're not going to copy and do the exact same thing, but we can set a reasonable expectation to get the budget that we need to create a content initiative and say, well, we're going to make sure that what we write is equal to or better than all of our competitors every time. We're going to do a little bit more research on the front end, and we're going to combine who we are today with what we want, plus with some learnings that we have from that competitive analysis. That's how we can get started, Doug. That's how we get started. We merge those things together. We get a reasonable expectation of what that velocity of content is going to be so that we can set expectations appropriately. So we might say, hey, we don't have a lot of coverage at all. It's going to take a lot of effort for us to own this topic. Let's set expectations appropriately on that. Here's some competitive cohort. You also can do this with machine learning and topic modeling technology. MarketMuse Punchline obviously is one of them, to say how much content you need to create, how much content you need to update on this topic. But on a small team where you're just starting out, you're just trying to get reasonable. You're just trying to set a flag over here, set a flag over there. I want to create this topic is critical to us being differentiated. Every article we create is going to be great. I'm going to get into the details across the buyer journey. I may create a collection of content for each of the industry specific targets we have. And then I also might create a payoff document or a content upgrade with a white paper or something that could be for lead capture. One thing to think about though, if you're investing tens of thousands of dollars into something like a white paper, you don't have to, it's not a one-to-one. If you were in 2001, you might get away with that. One white paper equals one abstract page. No. Your one white paper can be positioned anywhere. And it can be positioned many to one entry points. So you may do a lot of investment. Maybe you have access to a book. Maybe your founder wrote a book, right? Maybe you have access to massive volumes of white papers. Well, you can turn those things into lots of different entry points to fast track. That's a practice called repurposing. You can repurpose those into valuable assets that are entry points to that. You may have to supplement them and add to them, but that can be a way to, flywheel yourself to get more content out the door when you have this premium asset or content upgrade asset. So I'm spending a lot of time because I was going to get into this at the end. I'm spending a lot of time because this is so actionable for your specific question. So if you get into it and you say, okay, I got a white paper. I've got 6 white papers. I got these product pages, right? That's all I've got. I don't have anything else. I want to assess who I am. I want to understand what I can get done, but I also want to be thinking about this. Rich media optimization, it goes the same way. So audio, video, transcription. You can turn the transcription of this webinar. You can break it into pieces, add color to it, expand on the topics covered. I can turn this one transcript into 15 pages. I can turn it in, I can focus some annotation on a particular target industry, et cetera. So for you, Doug, what I would be thinking, small team, not a lot of resources is the way you're kind of describing it. don't know exactly where to start. I want to set some expectations with competitive cohort references. I want to get buy-off from my executive team about the topics that we want to own, that we want to have thought leadership on. And I want to look at my site, maybe with Google Search Console, or a tool like, if you have $300 lying around, Screaming Frog. Screaming Frog allows you to crawl your site and see all the pages. If you don't have $300 lying around, you can for free get one called Xenu, Xenu. But just be careful with that thing. It's a link profiler. You can see how many pages your site has. If you have access to a software platform like a SEMrush or an Ahrefs, or have the ability to get something like MarketMuse in-house, it's going to tell you who you are, where you have rankings, but you can just start free, with a Google Search Console, Google Analytics, understand what's going on, so you can piece together those three, and then set your watch or set your mirror to be clear, and then that's going to be a good segue back to the screen that you're looking at. Doug, how's that feeling? Feeling good?
Are you able to answer your question, Doug? Actually,
yes, no, that's kind of lines up with what I thought some of the next steps were, and I think the repurposing the content with the multiple entry points is what I was trying to articulate, but with a whole lot more words. So
awesome.
Okay, we got you.
I'll give you a great example of that, and hopefully this is inspiring. So I used to run a website called brianmadden.com, which is kind of weird because it's a person's name. So we acquired Brian's site. Brian's site was personally branded. Brian also had it's on desktop virtualization. He worked for VMware for years, as well as for himself. So he had a 208-page book that he wrote, everything he knew about virtualization. None of that content made it in explicit form. It was not woven into the fabric of his site. It was just posts and news and things like that. So we had an initiative where we took that book and turned it into many hundreds of high quality materials that provided access points to the book, certainly, to hit the cash register, but also just to create, this amazing thought leadership initiative. You can do that. Things you can do that internally if you're short on staff too, is interview the me's, right? Interview the SMEs, interview the CMO, interview the CEO, interview your product leader. When they talk, extract all the goodness out of their brain. That can be a great way, way to augment the content on a team where you don't have a lot of writers. So be thinking about creative ways to get a hold of SMEs, but not ask them to write. Imagine how busy your C-suite is, and they're doing their own stuff, but you can get 15 minutes, 30 minutes of their time to walk through an outline that you build, get their perspective on it to augment your personal research. It's a great way to get more content out the door as well. So Doug, feeling good?
yes, except for I am the C-suite, I am
Awesome.
the founder, I am the writer, and so I'm just looking at myself playing all those different roles. So
start recording yourself think. I do it all the time.
Well, it's
Record yourself talking.
I'm fortunate that I have somebody, a co-founder, that has a lot of experience in the field that we're going into, and we're already coming up with those topic ideas, and now we're going to try to build up the content like you said, but then also the different multiple entry points going to that content. So all right,
well, it's a great way to get started, especially in your spot. But a lot of times, and I'll give you one blind spot that a lot of founders have, and I had to teach myself out of it, is you get lost in the sauce of your own space or your own industry. And this is really helpful for everybody. And you don't think that the stuff's in your head is as actually special or differentiated as it actually is. Whether I'm working with a lawyer, and they might say, I don't know anything special about, craft, but you've been doing this for 20 years. You actually do. Then you get them talking, you ask them a question, and they say, you say, what time do you need to be at the court on Friday? And they're like, oh, you need to be there at 6 because this judge gets there then. And then you're going to make sure this, they're getting into the details. So sometimes it takes a question. And if you've got that great relationship with your co-founder, it's a good way to kind of back and forth and get those ideas out there. So Anyway, well, thank you for that. Hopefully that was helpful. That was actually how I was going to end the discussion. So I can track back to how to do a great content audit now. Pierce, what do you think? Or is there more questions?
We could track back. Actually, we have a few other questions here. Sarah Archer is asking, how do you prioritize content on a small content team? SVs, KWDs, top to bottom funnel, stuff like that.
Oh, Sarah, that's such a good question. So SV, search volume, keyword difficulty, top to bottom funnel. That's what's being asked in here. So good. Such a good question. Okay. So as a follow-up to this, I'm going to point you to some blog posts that you certainly need to read, Sarah. One of them is called Keyword Research and the Search Volume Illusion. There's also one about keyword difficulty, why this unpersonalized metric has to change. So you're getting two of my favorite topics with this one, and then top to bottom funnel. A great question. So there's some inherent problems in using search volume in isolation, right? There's inherent problems in using the industry standard for keyword difficulty at all, and then also in isolation. And I can get into those in detail. What you want to be thinking about is why you are currently special. So a quick way to do that audit and that inventory, you want that inventory kind of always running, is you want to understand your breadth and depth of coverage. So cross and down, imagine, on a particular topic. Cross and down, I want to understand when I've put a lot of effort and I've built high quality content on these topics. I have built great content on this. And then how did that manifest into success for me? What was that success? How frequently am I successful with content? So that's going to give me my coverage level, my efficiencies. So when I say efficiencies, how many articles, how much content have I published historically on this topic, all stages of the funnel, all variants, the entire cluster, right? And how frequently do those content items achieve their goals, right? And you might not think I'm answering your question, but I am. I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to get there. So now I've got my coverage and I've got my current authority on that topic, all right? That is my competitive differentiation. That's my competitive advantage. That's what I can bring to the world. Why is the punchline when you ask, how do you prioritize? Because a lot of people will use search volume and they'll use agnostic, unpersonalized keyword difficulty metrics that have no basis and have no point of reference to who they are. So they're just pointing at this external metric and they're not accounting for what they currently are when they're doing that prioritization. I can go write the best article ever written on this brand new iPhone. All right. I can write a 10,000 word, most beautiful art visuals ever. And I can go through it on saraharchersblog.com and it's not going to perform well. Right. I can go through that same article on CNET and it's going to crush. Why? It's not just because of links. It's because they have history covering phones, other electronics. They have history with reviews, right? And they have massive off-page power. So tracking back, how do you prioritize this? I like to explain that as your kind of the platform there, because you do want to understand the demand. So search demand, but you want to understand it at the entire pool of words level, not just the one word, all the pool of words that may be connected, all the attainable volume. And then for difficulty, make sure that the metric you're using, first of all, some metrics out there. So Google AdWords Keyword Planner is a pay-per-click difficulty metric, has no relationship to organic competition. So make sure you're not using some from Google AdWords Keyword Planner. If you're using that, the only thing that I can really coach you on is how much stuff's going to cost if you have to buy it, as well as relative commercial intent. Right. So if it's a lot of money, it means it's closer to the lead or closer to the sale in most cases. Right. But there is some exceptions there. If you're going to use a generic difficulty metric, make sure you know where it comes from. All right. You may not have sat around and reverse engineered all of them like this guy has. But, most of them come from solely link dynamics. So it's basically looking at off-page links. How many links does this site have? How many links does these pages have? And are they competing with you for this keyword? So there's a lot of jumps, correlative jumps there. So a lot of times the way someone is coached to use difficulty is to look at, try to get into rankings where your site is equivalent to the rankings of the pages that are there. It doesn't really work. It's completely biased. It kind of works sometimes, but it's a lot of times it's flipping coins. You should be using that as an ensemble with other data about yourself to coach and more refine that and personalize it. So the best way to prioritize content on a small content team is to understand who you are today, that coverage level, looking at the competitive content quality is something that's completely missed by these drugstore solutions, the non-customized solutions, and turn it more into a prescriptive approach. And that's where that drugstore reference comes from. You want actually a prescriptive approach to say, here's how I would prioritize. Then you want to set expectations for how much content you're going to need to build, right? For the funnel side, you need the entire funnel covered. So it's going to be, because your content works as a group, so it's going to be onus on you to report well. So don't just report page level. You want to report on a topic level across that entire cluster, because it actually moves along as a blob. Imagine it as like a blob or a snowball. Everything I've got about this topic, and it just grows over time. And so this gets into proper content auditing practices, because don't ever delete content because it's not performing, because it may be part of that blob. You want to be thinking about, did the page achieve its possible upside potential, and is it working in a mass, an interwoven mass to provide value? So punchline, you can use demand and difficulty, but take a shot at personalizing it and take a shot at trying to do it predictively to set expectations for yourself. And I'll give you the don't on this. So that's the light. I just shined the light of how to do it. I'll give you the reason why what I say is right. All right. Go back to the last time you used search volume to project traffic. All right. And look at that number, and then look at the pages you created and add up all the traffic they get and see how close you were with that prediction. Almost always those numbers are wrong. And so in a lot of cases, it's like flipping coins when people are using MSV in isolation. And I've got a great presentation, which I'll also share on this, that gets into the steps that you shouldn't take using search volume. And if you already have access to Brighton SEO, the event that just went on, my talk there covers this specifically. But just think about that. And there's a concept in that other article called the term pool multiplier. And that sounds really scary and technical, but all it means is that if you're going to get a page to rank really well for something, it's going to rank for thousands of other things that you can't predict. It's a skill to know how large that thousands of things bucket of words is going to be. So if you imagine you're just projecting off of search volume, first of all, the search result page may have different features on it. So your click-through curve is going to be off. And then all the other words that you get access to, you haven't added those two things together. So the best way to do this, try to personalize it, try to understand your existing authority, and take note of how big the addressable market is for this topic. And I hope that was helpful, Sarah. I know that was a really thorough question, but you asked something that I'm really passionate about. So I give you the most comprehensive approach. It sounds harder than it is. Think about who you are today, how big this pool of words is, and then what you might have access to. It's going to allow you to make some quick win decisions too. I know that if I write this article and I go out and put something out there that's equal to or better than my competitors, it's the best article that's ever been written on this topic. And it seems like it's an easy win. Those are shots worth taking and investing in with a small content team. and then wrap it around that topic cluster, the top funnel, mid funnel, bottom of funnel. What you don't want to do is, I call it teeth without a jaw. You don't want to just publish teeth without the jaw, the infrastructure, the pillar content, the guides, the thought leadership materials. You don't want to just shoot for kind of the end and hope. You want to make sure that it makes sense to users so that they'll trust you throughout the entire journey. All right, Sarah, awesome question. Pierce, what else we got before we move on? Thank you for the in-depth response. I love I love immediate gratification. Thank you.
So as a follow-up to that, she was actually asking what brands have amazing product-led content strategies that they could look into.
Love it.
Take it away.
My son gave me a little bit of a cold, so if you can hear me congestion a little bit. So this is the other tail end of this, the blue ocean product. I don't know what your product is, Sarah. This is what you're looking for. You're looking for ways that you can present the knowledge that you have in a way that no one else can. Some examples of this, SimilarWeb is a great example of this from a thought leadership perspective. They have amazing content about research, market intelligence. So they can show you that they know the value by showing you market research. So they did a great thing. If you type in SimilarWeb COVID-19, they have a page. It's like all the stats you'd ever want to know about COVID-19. So you go look at that, you're like, whoa, cool. They have a lot of stats. Well, if they could do that about COVID-19, they could do it about the topics that I care about, right? That's the ultimate blue ocean. And for me, right, I evaluate content quality. So I create materials that evaluate content quality at the page level, maybe at the industry level. Say, here's all the companies that are in, I'm looking at my vacuum. Here's all companies that are in beltless vacuums. Dyson it owns, they got the best content strategy, most content. Here's the track down. So now I can use that. No one else can build that page. That's why you see a lot of kind of hybrid market research type of stuff. Those are really great product-led content strategies to be considering. What's blue ocean? Now, you may not have tons of that or the resources to do that. So what you need to do is differentiate with your cluster content. Make sure that what you put out there is completely distinguished from your writing content that's equal to or better, not just equal to, but it's better. It provides unique insights that only you have, while also exhibiting that expertise. You can find this all in everywhere. Oftentimes, this is going to be in a situation. I mean, Ahrefs is a great example. When Tim Sulo's done there, in a short period of time, they've built content that only like 20-year industry experts would know. How they do it? They hired amazing people, great collaborations, but they have a gentleman by the name of Patrick Stocks. He works at Ahrefs. He wrote a guide to enterprise SEO that you could never, ever have written unless you worked in enterprise SEO. And because he did, he used to work at IBM. And so those are great examples. What I also I love seeing is when product-led growth SaaS applications, they bring their onboarding materials into light. So the stuff that the experience somebody's going to have, how can I get that earlier in that reading journey so that someone can almost have the experience through content? But there's a lot of there. CoSchedule is a great example of another one where, everything about scheduling stuff, right? There's piles of these examples that I can get into. I would love to put together. But yeah, another thing is honeypotting, product-led content strategy. Honeypotting is like, or tools that you can build that exhibit your expertise and can be part of a content package. Honeypot would be not just things like calculators, but it's providing the value that you have in an interactive experience. The most famous example of that would be HubSpot's Content Grader. I remember when we put our Content Grader out a little bit before that, but they had one, and yeah, anything where you're getting a teaser of value. One of my favorites doesn't exist anymore. Moat, which was acquired by Oracle. Prior to them being acquired by Oracle, you could just go in there and like browse all the ads in their entire platform, and like they would slice and dice it. So think about what data you might be able to provide access and then provide unique differentiated commentary on. Those would be cool, fun examples. Love it. Ahrefs, yes. That's exactly it. Yeah, and Tim, that I referenced is Tim Sulo, Suollo, and he is the CMO. Quite an interesting character. So go check that out. Really, really awesome. Excellent. So I'm going to I don't see any more, right? Pierce?
There's one more actually.
Oh, how do you reconcile content clusters with search intent?
There you go.
Great question, Brian. All right. Depends. No, it depends on what you think search intent means, right? So that, they call those SEO diapers. Depends. Right? So that's the answer they give to everything. I don't give that answer ever. So how do you reconcile this? Searcher intent, right? And then you also have, so don't mix it up with the intent of a content item. Does it have many intents? And then are you able to map that to some sort of journey? All right. So you've got 4 different intents that get smushed together, or conflated, or whatever I like to say confabulated, get conflated together. How do you reconcile it? When you're building topic clusters, you're building content at all stages of the information journey or buyer journey. That also covers a topic model comprehensively. And I'll say that in a much easier way. And I know we're going to wrap up on time now, but I love these questions. These are really good ones. So I think this is a proper way to do this session anyway. So if you're building a topic cluster based on expertise analysis, right? That's your first wave. That's your research. So reconciliation on research. That is, you're answering the question. If I were an expert on this content topic and I was covering this topic comprehensively, right? For this one audience, what are the things that I would naturally include in this page? So it's going to include topics. It's going to include questions that I'm going to elegantly answer, which could connect to a specific intent. It's also going to account for and call out other things that I naturally need. Okay, now I'm going to say that in common language. I'm going to go write the most comprehensive guide to taking care of a Boston Terrier. It's going to include concepts about brachycephaly, which is smushed-faced dogs. It's going to include how to feed them, what exercise levels they need. It's going to also potentially include related breeds. It's going to also include other things. Now, what is that? Why do I say the related breeds like that? Because on my site, I'm either going to have to know everything there is to know about Boston Terriers, or also have articles about other breeds for that to be natural. Because what are the natural ways that I would cover this topic? I would either have a deep dive on the specific, or I would also have a collective of other things that give me power and authority that is natural. So how do you reconcile? You need to reconcile the deep dive on knowledge against existing inventory on related concepts. That's step 1. Now I'm mapping that against the information or buyer journey. So I can go, I've got Boston Terrier content for people who are in these stages of information cycle. I've got content about multi-factor authentication for awareness, consideration, purchase, post-purchase troubleshooting, champion development. I may also need 2 other major intents. There's a lot more, which would be level of skill, which can sometimes map to role, which can sometimes map to industry. This is the most comprehensive answer to this really, really simple question, but it's really important. Okay, I love it. So think about this. I may need an early stage awareness guide for beginners, for advanced, for CMOs, or for CTOs, depending on who target market groups are or buying team is, And then I also may need one for industries. I may need one for utility companies and also for beer breweries, right? Depending on who my targets are. So reconciliation comes then. Now, you notice what I didn't ever say during this answer? I didn't say, go look at Google. This is where people are starting right now, doing all their intent analysis. There's two big problems there. And you can go search in Google for intent fracture, as well as SERP feature analysis. These are the two main errors in the game. One is smushing together the word intent with meaning. Meaning doesn't equal intent. Intent is a subset of the understanding of a particular meaning. So it's meaning disambiguation or meaning ambiguity. Because that sounds complicated, but what it means is if you type in bad, it could mean the thing that's flying around, or you could mean the baseball bat or a cricket bat, right? It could mean any type of those things. That's not intent fracture. Deep breath, what? I thought it was. No, it's not. It is, the fact is on the query that you're searching for, there are a certain number of results that appeal to one meaning of the word and also appeal to another meaning of the word. Why is that important? Because you're actually battling for a subset of true real estate, right, based on meaning. Now, what if the meaning is unified and explicit? That's when you can get into intent fracture. You look at a search result for how do you get bees out of your garage? It's pretty explicit intent. There's no ambiguity. I'm looking to figure out ways because I got bees in my garage. I'm trying to get them out, right? If I look at the search results in there and they're all exactly what I call on the nose, explicit intent, there's no ambiguity. There's no intent fracture, right? Every article is literally a how-to guide about dealing with bee problems in your garage. What if half of them are like garage basics and, you know, bugs, fun, or something like that, right? Well, now those are weird. Those are different. Okay, maybe I need to consider what package of content would tell the story that I can get all kinds of bugs out of one's garage, right? So that starts to get into search result analysis of intent targeting and intent fracture needs. The punchline on this is if you go do this wrong, you'll waste a lot of money. Why? Because if you go to a search result and it's intent, unified explicit intent. What is multi-factor authentication? And you go to the search result and it's 10 definitions. And you go, oh, okay, I guess that means I'm going to go write the best definition and I'm going to rank. Wrong. The people that are ranking there have earned the right to rank for that definition because either, remember the Boston Terrier dog analogy, either they have the best collection of definitions that go super deep on all tech topics, or they've written the entire buyer journey and the entire cycle on MFA, multi-factor authentication, that has given them the invitation to be able to rank with their definition, one or the other or both, right? So how to reconcile intent is to say, are you a deep diver? Do you have support structure across the cluster? And then what's the real landscape in SERPs, in the SERPs? Because what you don't want to do is go write all that content on a SERP and then #1 ranking page for that search result gets no clicks too. So that's another thing to analyze with your intent. So reconciliation happens within analyzing what I have. It happens across the buyer information journey. Then it's target, who you're targeting. That's on your side. Now get into the search result side, do it separately. Different meanings is one. Then it's intent fracture. And then you can start to layer on things like SERP features. It sounds hard when I say it in all those pieces, but I only say it in those pieces because what I don't want you to do is go to a search result and say, I see these types of pages, thus I need to create those pages in order to rank. It's only one part of the puzzle. And the quicker you get to that, the less money you'll waste. So I hope that was tremendously helpful. That's a really good question. I love it. I love the way you asked it too. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that.
Brian's also thanking you. It had a question actually, but it was almost the same as Doug's, so I think we're good to go.
Okay, last note, because I know we're gonna wrap at this.
Mhm.
Quickest way is this slide. I call this my Foursquare. All right. Fast way to get budget. All right. So if you're talking to Doug, because Doug's the boss. If you're on Doug's team, if Doug had a big team of writers, how do you get Doug to give you money to write content? First one, quick wins. What are the things that are going to have the biggest, most meaningful impact on my business? Quickest path to a concerted strategy is these 4 things. How can I assess those? Pages that I've built but are underperforming, but they're right on the edge of being performing well. I might want to improve them and surround them. I'm also going to look for quick wins in topics that I have some authority in and I have some momentum. All right. Other things I might learn from competitive analysis, like the cohort analysis. Okay. Quick wins. Always have a little bit of flavor of each of these Foursquare in each one of your plans, and you'll get more budgets approved. Goal-based. Goal-based. What's the business's goal? Right? We want to increase leads 30% to this area of our site. Okay. We want to own this topic in this year. Make sure it's time bound. I want to own this topic in the calendar 12 months. Cool. Here's how we're going to do it. Risk-based. Depending on your budget, gratitude. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Amit. So risk-based. All right. My competitor is publishing a whole bunch and killing us, or we've got a page we haven't updated for like 6 years and it gets all of our traffic, or our homepage gets too much traffic. So these are your risk theses, right? Organization, stuff you have to do, or your boss or the CEO says we have to do it. Put our best foot forward when we have those. So when you combine these 4 things, it can make a really, really great plan for the year to say, here's the initiatives from above. Here's our risks, competitive or stuff, ugly stuff. Like a good test for you. Do you have pages that get traffic that you don't like? Everybody does. Red face, right? We haven't updated them. We're afraid to touch them. They get too much. Okay. Yeah. Goals, right? Time-based goals. And then what are our quick wins? Updating reasonable content to make it great. So combine these 4 things, make it really differentiated. Think about that blue ocean concept, and you'll get more budgets approved, and your stuff will make more sense than it would have before. And Pierce, thank you for having me. And I'm so glad we made this Q&A because it just made it so much more exciting than me just rambling on, and I appreciate it. And thank you so much for all the great feedback. So
it was as always, it's a pleasure having you here, Jeff. So just to let everybody know, we'll have the replay of this available on the official Product Led YouTube channel in 24-ish hours, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.